Gregory Peck tells the horrific truth about Robert Mitchum before he dies. Elder Gregory Peck was Gregory Peck's real name. In La Jolla, California, on April 5, 1916. His parents split up when he was young, which had a lasting effect on him and made him more contemplative, which is how he became known for his personality and performances. Peck's grandmother reared him most of the time. Her strong sense of discipline and moral clarity helped mold his character. Peck went to the University of California, Berkeley, when he was a young man. At first, he wanted to be a doctor, but as he became more and more interested in literature, public speaking, and theater, he went in a different route. He became very into acting and stage performance at Berkeley. He found that he was good at it and that he loved telling stories as a way to think about moral issues and the complexity of people. He realized this and gave up medicine for drama. He eventually signed up for the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater in New York City, where he studied with the famous acting coach Sanford Meisner. PC started his career on stage, where he learned how to act in front of an audience and how to control his emotions. These talents would later become hallmarks of his cinematic work. People noticed his Broadway shows, and in 1944 he made his first movie, Days of Glory. Hollywood knew right away that Peck was something special. He was smart and serious without being arrogant, strong without being cruel, and in charge without being aggressive, which was different from many actors of his time. Gregory Peck quickly became famous in the late 1940s and 1950 seconds, and he became one of the most renowned leading men in the business. Movies like The Keys of the Kingdom 1944, Gentleman's Agreement 1947, and 12 O'Clock High 1949 made him known as an actor who would take on tough topics. In Gentleman's Agreement, PC played a journalist who uncovers anti-Semitism in American society. This was a brave and socially aware portrayal that showed both his personal principles and his belief that movies may help make the world a better place. Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird 1962 may be the character that most defines Gregory Peck. Peck's performance as the calm, upright lawyer who defends an innocent black guy in the racially segregated South was so good that it became part of popular legend. His Atticus Finch was a role model for generations of lawyers, teachers, and activists because he showed moral courage, empathy, and an unyielding belief in justice. PC's role won him the Academy Award for Finest Actor, but more crucially, it made him an artist whose work meant more than just entertainment. He later remarked that Atticus Finch was the character he was most proud of, and it's easy to see why. The figure showed PC's own belief in fairness, kindness, and quiet power. Peck gave great performances in many different types of movies, not just To Kill a Mockingbird. He was in romantic dramas like Roman Holiday 1953, where he was warm and charming next to Audrey Hepburn, and epic adventures like The Guns of Navarone 1961. He played a lot of different kinds of parts, from westerns like The Big Country 1958 to darker psychological roles like his scary role as Dr. Joseph Mengele in The Boys from Brazil 1978. This variety showed not only his technical talent but also his willingness to take risks and go against what people thought he could do. Starting in the 1980s, he began a new chapter in his career that was full of honor, depth, and rewards. He fully embraced television, which gave him the space to explore history, faith, conscience, and moral struggle with patience and nuance, something that movies were becoming less and less able to do. This change was not a step back from fame, but a planned and well-thought-out change. He chose roles that were important and meaningful at a time in his life when many performers quietly faded into the background. This showed that age had only made him more insightful and refined his artistic sense. His new canvas was television, which let him reach millions of living rooms while still connecting with people on an emotional and intellectual level. Instead of slowing down, he took on these projects with new energy, choosing characters that were morally important and had a lot of psychological depth. His powerful screen presence, which had long been linked to the grandeur of the silver screen, worked just as well on TV, where small gestures and restrained passion frequently spoke louder than big shows. Every performance felt planned, thought out, and based on real life, as if the wisdom gained from years of telling stories had finally reached its most natural form. One of his most memorable TV roles was as Abraham Lincoln in The Blue and the Gray. It was not easy to take on one of the most famous and well-known people in American history, but he took on the task with humility and quiet assurance. Instead than showing Lincoln as a faraway marble statue, he showed the man behind the legend, a thoughtful, tired, and very human leader who had to bear the heavy burden of a country torn apart by civil war. He showed Lincoln's moral strength and emotional burden with amazing honesty through tiny changes in tone, expressive silences, and a deep sense of inner strife. It was a performance that wasn't only about big speeches. There were also moments of uncertainty, thought, and kindness that reminded people that history is made by people's weaknesses as much as their strengths. He also gave a very touching and well-received performance as Monsieur Hugh O'Flaherty in the TV movie The Scarlet and the Black about the same time. He played the real-life Vatican priest who stood up to the Nazis during World War II, putting his own life in danger to protect and save thousands of Jews and Allied Poles. He brought to life a guy who was guided by strong religion and moral courage, yet he did so with understated power, showing heroism not as noisy defiance, but as calm, unending kindness. His act showed the conflict between spiritual obligation and physical peril, showing how brave it is to choose what is right even when it is scary. In October 1942, when the world was full of conflict and doubt, he married Greta Cushionen. He started a new chapter in his life that was full of love, growth, and the gentle rhythms of family. Their marriage grew into a home full of youth and promise. As they welcomed 3 sons, Jonathan, Stephen, and Carrie. Each child brought a new level of meaning and duty to his life. The pair broke up in 1955 because of the demands of their jobs and the stress of time, but their narrative didn't end in bitterness. Instead, it grew with grace. They opted to respect each other instead of being angry, and they stayed on good terms with each other, which showed that they were mature and still cared for each other even after the marriage ended. After he legally separated from his first wife, love came knocking again. This time it came in the guise of Veronique Pisani, a smart worldly news reporter from Paris whose intelligence and knowledge matched his own. Their marriage was a new start, defined by their shared experiences, rich culture, and newfound emotional connection. They made a blended family that made his personal life even better, welcoming a son named Anthony Peck and a girl named Cecilia Peck. In this second chapter of love and collaboration, he found not only companionship but also stability as his growing family became a source of grounding and inspiration among the ever-changing demands of his public life. His path through both marriages shows that he cared about family as much as he did about his job, someone who dealt with love, sorrow, and starting over with grace, leaving behind a legacy of not only success, but also of kindness, understanding, and strong family ties. Gregory Peck, one of Hollywood's most dignified leading men, looked back on his long career in film with rare honesty during the quiet years before his death. Peck was known for being morally right on TV and calm off of it. He didn't gossip or make things up very much, but when Peck talked about Robert Mitchum, the well-known rebellious star of American movies, he let himself have a moment of honest thought that startled even his closest friends. It wasn't outrage for the sake of scandal. It was a deep reality about a man who is too frequently seen as a myth. Peck started by saying how different their public images were. People like to act like we came from different parts of Hollywood. He said, I was supposed to be the good guy, and Bob was supposed to be the bad guy. Peck said that the comparison was useful but not full. Mitchum's reputation for being defiant, his fights with authorities, his brushes with controversy, and his sarcastic sense of humor became the main story, hiding how talented he was and how seriously he took his work. Peck said that the most misunderstood thing about Mitchum was his discipline. Peck said that the most surprising thing was how hard Bob really worked. Underneath the relaxed pose and half-closed eyes was an actor who worked hard to prepare, researched his characters, and knew how powerful it was to be understated. Peck remembered seeing Mitchum turn little lines of dialogue into powerful situations. He understood that less may be more. PC stated that type of control doesn't come from being lazy. It comes from being smart and sure of yourself. PC also talked on Mitchum's bad reputation for being cynical. Many people thought Mitchum's dry humor was a sign of distance or scorn, but PC saw it as armor. He thought Bob used humor like some men use a shield. It kept people away, but it also made him honest. Peck says that Mitchum was very aware of the lies and hypocrisy in Hollywood and refused to pretend otherwise. Peck said he didn't care about making the room happy. He wanted to tell the truth, even if it made people feel bad. Peck's revelation about Mitchum's sensitivity was probably the most startling. He hid how much he cared. Peck admitted, Peck thought that Mitchum's problems at home and mistakes in public were signs of a restless spirit, not a lack of morals. Bob stated he had a type of sadness that he didn't know what to do with other than make art out of it. Peck said that Mitchum's performances had a haunting quality because of their emotional undertone. PC ended with a thought that was both appreciative and elegiac. He said that Bob could have been safer and more respectable if he had wanted to, but he wouldn't have been Robert Mitchum if he had. The fact for Peck was not that Mitchum went against Hollywood standards, but that he showed them. By showing this point of view, PC gave one last lesson. Contradiction is often present in great art, and the most lasting artists are those who are brave enough to be themselves. Gregory Peck's statements did not destroy Robert Mitchum's legacy in the end. They made it better. What he said wasn't a stunning secret. It was a deeper knowledge that valued Mitchum not as a cartoon of rebellion, but as a genuine artist, a multifaceted man, and an indelible part of film history. He died in his sleep on June 12, 2003, without any pain, ending a life that was full of great accomplishments, quiet dignity, and lasting impact. He was encircled in spirit and memory by the love of those closest to him. His dedicated second wife and children carried on his legacy and the principles he held most dear. His death was not just the end of a life. It was the last quiet curtain call for a man whose presence had a lasting effect on many generations. He was buried with solemn grace and respect, just like he lived. His body was buried at the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels. There is a mausoleum in Los Angeles, California, a site of deep spiritual meaning and beautiful architecture, suited for a person whose life was led by principle, religion, and moral conviction. The mausoleum is a peaceful place where people can think, remember, and commemorate a legacy that will live on. It is a calm place where fans, family, and future generations can come to do these things. He is no longer physically present, but his spirit lives on in the memories he made, the lives he changed, and the lasting effect of a life lived with purpose, honesty, and grace.